Hello, my darlings, and welcome back to Radio Wasteland, the best in paranormal talk, radio, and all that. I'm your host, Chauncey Allworth. It's my co-host, Kara Kittrick. Kara,
hello.
Do you have any news for us this evening?
Yes, I do. So first off, the U.S. Air Force has warned any would-be Area 51 invaders that the U.S., quote, stands ready to repel any threat to the base. This after a joke event suggesting that individuals band together and storm Area 51 went viral. I don't know why I'm reporting on that, because everyone in the world knows. It's difficult to tell whether the military is actually worried that someone might show up. Maybe they just want to nip this sort of thing in the bud. Maybe the aliens are putting pressure on them to guarantee results. We don't know. A monthly meeting of the Kansas City Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON, found itself inundated with people after a number of mysterious floating orbs were spotted late last June. While Kansas City MUFON usually sees 15 or 20 people at these meetings, their meeting last Monday had nearly 150 people in attendance. DARPA stated that the floating orbs were balloons, but many MUFON members didn't believe them. I find it very odd we knew nothing about these DARPA balloons until after the fact, one said. Very suspicious. Lastly, Elon Musk would like to link brains with smartphones through his new startup Neuralink. The Neuralink devices will consist of very small chips which are placed in the patient's brain that connect to a small over-the-ear device via Bluetooth. Although, quote-unquote, telepathic brain-machine interfaces of various kinds have been tested in laboratories for more than a decade, this may be one of the first high-profile attempts to market this technology to improve daily lives. Right now, Neuralink is looking into helping people with difficulty moving or speaking, such as stroke victims, by allowing them to control a smartphone app with the brain. But the announcement has launched speculation that it may soon become normal for healthy people to augment their brains with technology. Trials are expected to begin as early as next year. Back to you, Chauncey.
This last one is a topic that I found to be really sort of interesting. For quite some time. I saw some joke thing where they were sort of looking back on the worst people to ever be on Shark Tank. And
oh boy, I can't wait to hear how this connects.
And it was like the very first episode or something like that, and the guy actually wanted to implant a Bluetooth device in people's heads.
In Shark Week?
And Shark Tank.
Shark Tank.
I'm not sure. Did I say Shark Week?
No, I think you did say Shark Tank, but my brain heard Shark Week, and I was very confused. Is this some kind of like the captain from Jaws kind of situation, except he wants to become a shark hunting cyborg?
Totally. We're gonna need a bigger cochlear implant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a minigun arm.
No, and it was just funny how creepy he was, and as I was watching it, especially when it was outdated, I was thinking to myself, okay, I understand that we're getting, plastic surgery is on the rise, all this sort of stuff, people, body modifications, tattoos, mm-hmm. I got some of those, piercings, I used to have some of those, there's a lot of body modification going on.
Right.
But especially watching this outdated thing where, I look at my phone and my phone's outdated. I bought it 2 years ago, it's outdated. Now it's like, it immediately came to my mind, do I really want to get tech put into my body?
Yeah.
That is possibly going to be outdated in 16 months. It's like, how many times are they going to cut in there? And also it like recharged through a needle that went in the ear to like recharge it. So that was kind of a no-go, that was a no, but
I think the chief thing for me is that like, we know how freaking bones work.
Yeah.
Plastic surgery of the face, of whatever. We know how that works. Anyone who tells you that we have anywhere near even 10% of an understanding of like how a brain works,
right,
is misinformed, because we don't.
Well, we
don't really know what this thing does.
In the case of this guy, it was not necessarily a something that works in your brain. In the case of this guy, it was you would hear your phone.
Right.
through the thing, but
Okay.
outside of the realm of that, what's your take on recreational body modification? Extreme recreational body modification, and I throw in recreational because I know there's a lot of people with medical reasons and stuff like that.
Right, but you're talking about like able-bodied people.
Yes, it is. It is absolutely unnecessary to connect your cochlear implant to the internet.
Yeah, but rad.
That's how you feel. That's kind of how I feel about it too, and I would love to see other people do it, and I'm not going to.
I feel like I might if I think we're going to get there at maybe in a few decades.
Yeah, we need some sort of non-invasive surgery to do this though. You can't cut into somebody over and over every time you get an upgrade.
Why not?
Because scars eventually break down and bad things happen. I mean, have you ever known somebody who got like an operation like 7 times on their arm and their arm is not doing good after the 7th operation? It may be doing like better in a pain, but I mean the movement, it's
that's fair.
There's no going back, man.
Now this chip is like ridiculously small. We're talking.
Well, what is Elon Musk thinking that this thing will do?
Well, so this is for like quadriplegics, stroke victims, whatever. So like this is definitely
somebody who would benefit from it.
Exactly.
Have a better quality of life.
It's like at this point, would you like to be able to speak, or would you,
Oh yeah,
like
I'm all for
to
that.
take the risks of, all the surgery?
Yeah, audience, don't misunderstand. When it comes to like medical necessity, I'm all for this stuff.
Yeah, but I think that's where it starts. I think
I think you're right.
we get it really good working on the people who have a medical need for it, and then eventually we're doing things that are fancier.
Okay, well, we'll take a second. We have a quick call in from our buddy Carl. Carl,
okay.
Let's see what Carl has to say about this. Carl, you have an opinion on this?
I just want to know, Chauncey,
I'm
if
listening.
you were organizing a convoy to head out to Area 51.
No.
It would be a Radio Wasteland convoy to join the other 2 million people that are going to be there.
Believe me, if I could afford it, I would totally go on a journalistic level. I'm not ready to storm any gates, though,
Okay, wait a minute now. We can get you a press pass.
Yeah. No,
a press pass to Area 51.
For both of you.
Yeah.
Both of you, for Area 51, for the gathering of 2 million people. And I'll give you a plan. I was in the military. I'll give you a plan on how to organize 2 million people into a wedge.
Oh, okay. Good.
And you just start off.
We'll draw straws for the point on that.
Who's going to be number one there? That's right. You can name them Leonidas.
Yeah.
And it's the size of the state of Connecticut, but that's okay. So I'm thinking is that we could probably take 30, 40, van loads in our Volkswagen vans and head there. It's going to be better than Burning Man.
I agree, and given the option, I would totally do that.
Yeah.
We're coming up on commercial here, Carl. Carl,
okay.
Thank you for calling in. Totally funny, and we're going to have to discuss this off, discuss our plans because I don't want to mess around. If you're proposing this press pass and this is happening, this is happening.
This is happening. Okay.
But you're going too, and so's Linda.
Well, we just might. We'll have to borrow her brother's Volkswagen van that's like 40 years old.
Sounds good.
But we'll go. Okay. Anyway, great show as usual. We'll talk to you later.
All right. You're listening to Radio Wasteland. When we come back, we have our guest Rob Shelsky, and we're going to be talking about the dangerous side of the UFO.
Oh yeah! Swing that thing!
Visit Radio Wasteland at Instagram at instagram.com/Radio Wasteland.
All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland. Kara, I'm curious, how many people... Now, I know that we keep reiterating that this raid on Area 51 is a joke, and it was, based off of the joke, how many people do you think are really going to show up to this thing? Do you think any?
I think any. I'm guessing a few thousand, but
Really?
They won't be there to storm the place. They'll be there to take selfies.
They're going to be freak watchers. They're going to be there to watch the other freaks and then realize that they're
right.
the freaks.
No one is going to actually, like, do anything illegal, I'm pretty sure. Like, at the very most, 1 to 10 people will do something stupid and get arrested.
Yeah, it might be, you know, it needs to be like that old Western movie with Glenn Ford, Cimarron, with the land grab, where they basically line up everybody in their wagons and horses, and then basically they fire off the gun and everybody has to ride out there and try to get the piece of land that they want. I want to be up on the hill. I want to be up on the hill when it's done.
We're divvying up Area 51 right now.
Right.
So,
and
you
it's
know,
going to be
whoever
like,
gets the anti-gravity matrix gets the anti-gravity matrix.
right, yeah, totally.
Whoever gets the Stargate, you know, they've got the Stargate now, and they're going to be our emissary to the other dimensions.
Right. It's going to be like 6 Winnebagos, all of which oddly driven by people who look like Hunter S. Thompson at different points in his life, with antennas made out of, you know, like tinfoil, you know, triangular tinfoil antennas, you know, riding. Can't you just see that in the distance? You're on the hill, you're looking over, there's clouds of poof coming up behind the Winnebagos. There's cigarettes extended upon cigarette holders out windows.
Right. You're on like
the land grab.
You're like on the wall of Area 51. You've got your binoculars, you're looking out, something's coming over the horizon. It's Winnebagos.
Right.
Yeah, I can see that. That's not what's going to happen, though.
I don't know. What do you think is going to happen?
I think very little is going to happen.
Do you think it's going to be more like the party with Annette Bening from Mars Attacks? I'm referencing a bunch of movies that I'm sure you... Have you seen Cimarron? You know, like 1956 with Glenn Ford?
Of
You didn't
course.
see that one?
I'm all about, you know, the movies from the 1950s.
All right. Did you see Mars Attacks?
No.
Okay.
I don't know anything.
I don't even know how to communicate with you, you know?
This is intergenerational divide, the
Yeah.
show. I was about to say interdimensional, which also accurate,
Might as
but,
well.
you know, not what's at issue here.
Right. All right. So we're here with our guest, Rob Shelsky. Rob, you here with us?
I sure am,
All right.
despite a really bad thunderstorm we just had.
Oh, that's terrible.
Well, is all good there where you are?
Yeah.
It is now, but it was a particularly violent one. Large branches falling down, all sorts of debris everywhere.
Where are you?
I'm in near Greensboro, North Carolina.
Oh, that makes sense. You know, out here we're worried. We're worried about
Makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, watching the news and watching the weather that goes on the news, that makes sense.
Yeah, we had several power blinks, so I was a little bit late calling in. I had to reset a few things before I could make the call.
Oh, that is totally fine. You know, we're
We
really
forgive
happy.
you.
Yeah, you're forgiven. We're really happy to have you on because every time we talk to you, it's always a really interesting deep dive into a topic that I find to be really interesting that I feel like not enough people are hitting. You know, as a outside looker of the UFO phenomenon and aliens and extraterrestrials, you know, well, I've said this before. A lot of people have gotten into this sort of thing because they had experiences and stuff like that. Personally, I got into it because I like movies. And, you know, normally in the movies, they're trying to kill us. You know, so...
Yeah.
That's like
Starting
where...
in the 1950s and going on from there. Yes, they do.
You know.
And I think the movies may have been closer to the mark than we realize.
So, you know what? You know, with so many people going in the other direction of they're here to help, they're spiritual, you know, we have this big divide in the UFO community where a lot of people have really brought major spirituality into it and stuff like that. You know, what made you decide to go in this direction?
Well, it wasn't that I decided to go in that direction. I just started investigating UFOs. Again, I was a MUFON field investigator and worked on that. Before that, I was a private investigator, which I am again. I go to sites, I research them, the whole bit. And it wasn't like I wanted it to turn out this way. It's just that all the evidence seems to point to the fact that UFOs are not friendly. At least the vast majority do not seem to be. They cause damage to property over and over. They cause injuries over and over. They cause civilian deaths, many of them. They cause military deaths, many of them. And we're talking over decades here. So I'm gaining a preponderance of evidence that there's a lot of negative impact from UFO sightings. Being anywhere near them in a lot of cases. And I haven't seen anything on the other side of the fence that says there are space brothers, as one woman yelled at me at a presentation I gave in Baltimore not long ago.
That's a little sexist, but all right.
Well, show me something good that they've done. Show me where they beamed someone out of a burning building just in time, or they shone a light into the woods and led Hansel and Gretel out of the woods. Anything good. And the most we can come up with is a couple people that were abducted who say after the fact that one I think said they had cancer and the cancer was cured. Now, we have no empirical data that the aliens cured it, but I also think that if they were abducting people, they repeat the abductions quite often, and they are supposedly tracking these people. They find bits of things in the people's body, like some kind of insert, and we don't know what they are, but they theorize it's tracking devices. Well, if you're tracking an experimental creature, like a guinea pig, for instance, you might not want it to die. So if you have the power to cure the problem, so you could go on tracking what this creature is doing, you probably would. In any case, there's only on one hand, those sort of types of things. I believe Travis Walton, long after he was abducted, long after he gave his initial story where it was quite traumatic, has since become spiritual about it and thinks maybe they helped him because when he went to look, they're taking off or trying to apparently hurt him, so they beamed him on board to save him. Well, again, that's a change in the story long after the fact. And a lot of people do this, and it's, similar to the Stockholm Syndrome, where if you're abducted by someone and kept with them long enough, you begin to sympathize with them, as with the case of Patty Hearst back in the, I guess it was the 70s or early 80s, where she was abducted and became one with her captors after a while. But even if you allow those as to be good ones, you're only talking 3 or 4 cases versus thousands of cases of property damage, injuries, and deaths.
Well, we only got about 3 minutes up until we hit this commercial break, but so before we get to some of the good scary stuff, why do you think with so few of these, why do you think so many people are going in this sort of spiritual, they're here to help, they're here to save us? Is it just hope?
Oh, well, we go through phases. In the 50s, every alien was a horrible monster with tentacles. And then came the 60s, and it began to transition. 70s and 80s came along, and all of a sudden the aliens were kind. We had Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where they were nice, sweet little short people. We had E.T., a lovable little creature, and all of a sudden the aliens were our friends. It was almost as if someone was gearing us up for first contact, and then all of a sudden they changed their mind, and then all of a sudden it started getting very, very dark again in the movies. And the public does this and follows this, and it's waves. Native American Indians in the 50s, when I was a kid, we played cowboys and Indians. No one wanted to be an Indian. They were bad. And then later on, Indians, or Native Americans, as we now call them, have suddenly come into a good light, and which is great. But my point is the public shifts from one viewpoint to another. Now we're getting very metaphysical about the extraterrestrials, but I don't see the evidence that there are space brothers. I just can't find it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I always kind of blamed it on mental illness. I don't understand the spiritual aspect. But to be honest, I don't really understand a lot of spiritual aspects of my day-to-day life, much less, my relationship with my space brothers. So I'm just not a very spiritual guy. I'm a little more nuts and bolts.
Well, I think people want to always think the best, and they want to hope for the best, and they don't want to fear. And so it's understandable that they would hope that this would be the case, that a more advanced race would be kinder to us, more compassionate, more gentle. But when you're abducting people against their will and tormenting them against their will, I don't see those as being nice things to do to human beings.
Yeah, I agree. I feel bad for owning a dog. So, I totally agree with you.
Exactly. And then I had one lady say to me, or woman, and at the same thing, that, well, they're so far advanced beyond us, maybe they see us as ants. I said, we're pretty far advanced beyond ants, and I don't think we treat them as badly as extraterrestrials are treating us. And if they're so advanced, doesn't that include a higher moral standard, a higher ethical standard? Because we're developing it as we advance. Why wouldn't the ETs do it too?
Well, you're totally right. We're coming up on break here, but let me throw out that in the world's food crisis, we are thinking about eating insects in order to get the protein that we need. So our relationship with ants might change very drastically in the near future.
As the ETs might with us, who knows? Maybe we're edible.
All right, you're listening to Rob Shelsky here on Radio Wasteland. Come on back. Don't miss out.
You're listening to Chauncey and Kara on Radio Wasteland right here on 96.5 FM and 1460 AM. That's Free Fire Radio. And don't forget to follow Radio Wasteland on Facebook at facebook.com/radiowasteland.us.
All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland and our guest, Rob Shelsky. We're talking about the, the dangerous and the potentially nefarious side of UFOs. This world has seemed to be so wrapped up for about a decade now in, visitations and that it's beautiful. But, Rob, let's get some examples of really why we might think that they're up to no good. Are there any sighting examples? Everybody likes to cite sightings or cite experiences, and they're always vague and misunderstood. Are there any that basically are not vague and misunderstood? They're pretty obviously not very nice.
Oh, yes, there's quite a few. And it dates way back. It dates way back as far as, for instance, a military flight over the Great Lakes, and two pilots were aboard, Lieutenant Felix Munkla, Second Lieutenant Robert Wilson. That was in 1953. There was a UFO spotted over the Great Lakes. They flew to intercept it. And now the military doesn't scramble jets to intercept things unless they think there's a valid reason to do so. They said they sighted the object. They were closing with it. They were watching this on radar the whole time. The objects appeared to merge. This is a matter of fact, a matter of historical record. The objects seemed to merge, and then there was only the one object, the original UFO object, and it took off north across the Canadian border. And of the plane, nothing was ever seen again, or of the two men. They finally had a memorial long after they died and did a plaque for them, but the men are gone. They just never had a chance. They never came back. No pieces of wreckage of the plane were ever found. No bodies were found. To this day, nobody knows what the heck happened to them. There are other cases of the same sort of thing in the military. The Soviets had the same problem. They had skin divers or military divers in Lake Baikal in the Soviet Union at the time. They went down into the water. They went to a great depth. They saw some people or things in silvery suits with helmets, but they said they didn't look at all like the proper diving gear for such a depth. And so they decided to chase them. Then one of the divers decided to try to net one of them. And this was catastrophic because some force or some pressure from below, so far deep they don't know what it was, forced the four divers to the surface. Well, when you come up to the surface that quickly, that instantly, it causes the bends, which is nitrogen bubbles forming in the bloodstream of the body. And this can cause severe pain, permanent injuries, and death. Well, to treat it, they want to put them in a hyperbaric pressure chamber. Unfortunately, the one they had only fit two men. They tried to shove all four men in there. Three of them ended up dead. One of them ended up permanently handicapped. This goes on and on and on, this sort of thing. That's the military. In the private world, the same thing is going on. A young man in Australia, Valentich, was flying. He reported to the control tower that he saw, strange lights. He had a running conversation with him. You can get the transcript yourselves. They're online. And he said they were getting closer, and there was a strange noise, and it went dead, and he was never seen again. Neither was his plane, no wreckage, no nothing. Same thing as with the event that happened in 1953 with Lieutenant Munkla and Wilson. And it goes on with civilians as well. You have the Dyatlov Pass incident, where all those skiers ended up dead. It's pretty famous. And under the strangest circumstances, an orange orbs were seen in the same region just a couple nights before. It was in a region that was historically considered dangerous for some reason. Even the name of the mountain they were going to, it was either the mountain or the pass at the time. It was called Don't Go There in the local tribal tongue. So
Right.
And they were just skiing across country. They were college students, and they ended up dead under horrible, horrible circumstances. And people say, well, maybe these were just accidental. Well, there's just too darn many of them to be accidental. And on top of that, we have the deaths of people who are trying to investigate this. We have swarms of deaths of researchers, journalists, scientists, microbiologists, astronomers. And again, they seem to come in swarms. And what's causing their deaths, we're not sure. I would suspect some government agency or some deep government type of thing might be involved in that one. But in 1987 alone, we had a really big spate of deaths of researchers. It was phenomenal how many were killed, and under the strangest circumstances, supposedly committing suicide. One killed in his own garage by his own car, another one tying a rope around himself to a tree and getting in his car and driving off and doing it this way. And all these people, the families say there was no reason why they would have committed suicide. A couple were writing books. They were known to be writing books at the time, including a famous author, Philip K. Dick. He died supposedly of a stroke, but his manuscript disappeared. And his manuscript was about ETs, UFOs. His own personal contacts with them, supposedly, gone. This just, again, goes on and on and on. And then we have the disappearances. I'm not talking about abductees, and there's supposed to be over 1 million of those alone. I'm talking about people who have permanently disappeared forever in the tens of thousands every year. In the United States alone, for instance, you can have, on average, about 800,000 to 1 million people who vanish each year. Now, once you deduct all the normal reasons for disappearances, kidnappings, murder, people running away from home, one parent abducting the child of the other parent, all that sort of thing, people wanting to start over with a new life and a new identity. Once you get rid of all that, you're still left with about 7 to 5% or 5 to 7% that simply can't be accounted for and who are permanently gone. This means a number approximately around 50,000 people in the United States alone every single year vanishing from the face of the earth. Australia has the same problem. Alaska has the problem. From 1988, for the next 7 years, over 60,700 people were reported missing in Alaska. So huge is that number that now they're referring to it as the Alaska Triangle. So we are having abductions. We are having deaths, horrible deaths of military people. We are having horrible deaths of civilians. We are having people disappear in the tens of thousands. We are having entire villages disappear. And this isn't just recent. It's basically throughout history. We have animal mutilations in the hundreds and thousands, depending on what country you're in. We have crop circles. Now, of course, a lot of those can be hoaxes and are. But there are so many of them, and some are so complex, no one knows how they could possibly be done. And on top of that, some of these crop circles date back to the 1600s, long before anyone was hoaxing them. So, again, how do we account for all of this? And why is there so much death and destruction and injuries and disappearances? What's happening to all these people who are disappearing? That's the big question.
So do you think, well, we got about 3 minutes up until the commercial break. Do you think that this is why the government doesn't take it seriously? I mean, obviously, not to come down on UFO researchers, but I mean, if UFO researchers are figuring this stuff out with half the information, surely the government is onto it on some level as well, I would think. Or are they just taking...
I think they are, and I think they have been for a long time. There's several possible reasons. One is perhaps the government knows all about this and can't do a thing about it, is powerless. So rather than have the population panic and saying, oh yes, thousands of you people are being stolen every year and there's nothing we can do about it, and you're not being returned, like the abductees are, although that counts too, and there's nothing we can do about it, people would quickly lose faith in their government as being any source of protection. And once you lose faith in the government, those governments tend to collapse. Another theory is they might be in collusion with it, getting some technology in return for allowing the aliens to do this to us. There's several possibilities, none of them good.
Right. Huh, crazy. This is really crazy, and this is kind of what I always thought, every time people brought up abductions, yet are also talking about how, as you said, there are space brothers. It was difficult to rectify those two situations,
As you know, true love is taking someone from their home.
Friends, and maybe there is a race out there that is our friends. But from the evidence I've gathered, it just doesn't look that way. I wish it did, but it just doesn't.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying to think, and so in about a minute, what do you make of the government releasing these videos?
I find it a little frightening. I find it a little frightening that the government has decided to release this information. It looks to me like they're getting us ready for something, and because the information they're releasing is not of a positive nature, it's not of the space brother nature, I find that the evidence or whatever it is that they might eventually divulge might not be good news.
All right. Well, absolutely terrifying. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that terrifying information with us. All right. We're coming up on break here. You're listening to Rob Shelsky. We're talking about the terrifying aspect of UFOs and abductions. So stick around and come on back.
You're listening to Free Fire Radio 96.5 FM, 1460 AM. You're listening to Radio Wasteland with Chauncey and Kara. Find all our shows and archives by visiting Radio Wasteland at radiowasteland.us.
All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland and our guest Rob Shelsky. We're talking about the scary side of UFO abductions. Are they really here to get us, or UFO visitation in general, sightings and all that. In your research, so a lot of people like to cite that they're here to help us and they're here to watch over us because of passes over military bases and nuclear silos and stuff like that. First of all, is there any truth to what they're saying there? And then secondly, what's your take on that?
Yes, they have been often cited around military bases in the past and even more recently. But again, the news isn't good. In one case, they went near a military base. They were cited, and the base experienced blackouts. They had their missile silos started counting down, as if they were about to launch, going into the launch sequence, nuclear missiles.
That's terrifying.
So I wouldn't call that a friendly gesture.
Yeah.
There's another case where one was over a military base, and there was a launch of a rocket, and this UFO was seen, and it looks, if you look at the video, as if a beam is shooting out from it, and the rocket exploded. Again, this doesn't look good to me. I just don't find that is a positive. I mean, if they're trying to stop a nuclear war, why would you put missiles into a launch sequence, overriding all the safeguards and protocols that the base had for those things? It should have been impossible, but it happened. And, excuse me, this seems to happen a lot. So I don't think there's so much safeguarding us as they are observing, watching, and on occasion interfering. Now, some could argue that maybe they were just demonstrating their power and what they could do. Well, if you want to demonstrate your power to me, shut me down. Don't make my missiles launch against my will. That would demonstrate to me that you have more power than I do if you can stop something that's trying to launch, and which they also did too. But even so, around these military bases, including in Brazil, again, this dates way back, they buzzed military bases. People had radiation burns, sunburns they called it. It was radiation burns. They did it in Ohio. They've done it in Indiana. They've done it in New Mexico. Whatever these things are, and I do think they exist, and so do lots of other people, including a field marshal in England, several scientists here in this country, and including Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, among others. So I think these things exist. I think they're real. I think they're here, and I think they're dangerous.
So
otherwise, why are they swarming all over our planet in our oceans and lakes? But they seem to be either avoiding us, or when they interact with us, things seem to go badly. It's almost as if they don't care, as if they're amoral or immoral. They just don't seem to care what happens to the people that happen to be nearby. Now, they got to know we're here. If you have that kind of advanced technology, we certainly can scan and tell when people around. Why aren't they taking some kind of precautions? They don't seem to be. They buzz commercial airliners. They buzz military jets. It just goes on and on and on. And I can't find anywhere near the positive evidence for their behavior patterns to counteract all this negative. Now, some people argue there's good aliens and there's bad aliens, and the good ones have a non-interference pact where they don't want to interfere in our developing culture, just like the prime directive in Star Trek. You don't want to mess up a culture's development. But if all these other ones are damaging us, killing us, abducting us, and they're just standing by and doing nothing, what good are they?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
How can you call them good if they don't interfere? If they don't act like the Good Samaritan and say, hey, knock that off. Stop doing that to these people. But they don't seem to be. So if there are good ones, how good are they?
Well, earlier you made the point that a field marshal agreed, and it prompted a question. So when you're researching this stuff, we got a lot of people who believe they're here to help and so on and so forth. When it comes to ex-government and ex-military people who believe that these things are out there, are they consistently on the side of, like, we need to watch out?
Well, sometimes they're more neutral than that. In the case of the Air Chief Marshal Lord Dowding, he said, of course the flying saucers are real and they are interplanetary. The cumulative evidence for the existence of UFOs is quite overwhelming, and I accept the fact of their existence. So that's fairly neutral. We don't know. He doesn't state that there are negative consequences from it. And, of course, you only get that negative consequence thing when you start having a lot of encounters and you build up the evidence for it. Again, I wish I could find more positive evidence. I'd like to think someone out there is on our side. I really would like to do that. But right now, all I can tell people is if you see a UFO and you can safely video it or photograph it, do so. But if it looks like it's interested in you and coming towards you, run like hell.
Right. Be as not interesting as you can be. No reason to track me. I'm not interesting. Yeah.
Right. I'm just going to go hide in this hole on the culvert on the side of the road or whatever.
Right.
But I mean, it's just because the evidence seems to be overwhelmingly that it's not a good thing to have a contact. At the very least, it seems like people get burned because the ship flies near them. At the worst, they get abducted and they get treated savagely. Oh, yeah, they're made to forget, so that makes it okay. No, it doesn't. Just because you're kidnapped and then someone uses psychoactive drugs on you to make you forget and blank out your memory doesn't mean that the crimes weren't committed to you.
Right.
The permanently
it's like
disappeared
intergalactic roofies.
Where are they going? What are they doing with these people?
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I always hear people justify it like, oh, they know better and so on and so forth. But that is absolutely terrifying. It is. Yeah. Even Stephen Hawking in the end said something to the effect of maybe we shouldn't advertise where we're at.
Right. He thinks it's crazy to have beaming messages out into the universe because you don't know what you might attract. The human population is pretty law-abiding, generally speaking. They think that about 5% of us are really criminal-minded. Well, what if the same is true of intelligent races in the galaxy or the universe? Yeah. You could have that 5% may number the billions, and they may have nothing kind to do. And also, historically speaking, we have ample evidence that any time an advanced culture interferes with a lesser advanced culture, it's the lesser advanced culture that gets destroyed or heavily damaged. Time and time again in our own history, we've seen this repeated. What makes us think that it stops at our atmosphere, that it doesn't continue on into space?
Right. I agree. We can only make assumptions about life based off the life we know, and that's what we know. All right. Well, we're here. We're here at the end of the show. Rob, I really appreciate you coming on. I know you got a busy schedule. You are just blowing up. You're all over the place when we look. Man, so I really appreciate you making time for us.
Well, thank you very much, and I enjoy being on your show. And you ask good questions. I like it when people ask to-the-point questions.
Oh, good. Good. Well, before we let you go, why don't you tell our audience where they can find out more about your new book and where they can find out more about you?
Well, they can find out everything about me at robshelsky.blogspot.com, or they can just go to, the easiest way is go to Amazon and just type in my last name, and all my books come up, and all the new ones as well. Or they can always just do a Google search on me, and plenty of stuff comes up that way. That's probably the best.
All right, Rob, thank you very much for being on the show. Always great to have you. And I love the topics you bring. They're always what I want. We had you up before for time travel and Invader Moon and now freaky UFOs. I love it, and can't wait to have you on again.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
All right, you've been listening to Rob Shelsky here on Radio Wasteland. All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland. We were just listening to our guest, Rob Shelsky. Man, every time he comes on here, he has these great topics that I'm always impressed at his ability to retain the knowledge.
Yeah.
Because I'll huck him questions. I'll huck him questions out of the blue, and he will have answers for them.
Right, get a long, articulate, detailed answer.
Mm-hmm.
Also, can I just say, that was alarming.
That was alarming, because I expected to, hear things I'd never heard before. I expected to, hear things like, oh, yeah, what about the laser beam of 47? That, destroyed the town of something or other. I didn't hear those things. What I heard was a spin on this thing that we all know and we think about as paranormal UFO fans, stuff like that.
He deconstructed it.
And basically laid it out to us why do you think this is so good? and I'm with him, man. Why is that so good? Why is it good that somebody would tag me?
Well, I didn't know about a lot of the military pilots disappearing and the people disappearing and all that kind of thing. That it's stuff I was unaware of. But the abductions I've always been kind of okay.
Yeah.
That's nice of them.
If you think about it, we as humans, when we tag things, normally we're tagging them to try to help them or to bring them back from. Right, exactly. But we're not exactly, losing numbers on the planet. They're not trying to bring us back from the edge of the extinction like the bald eagle or anything, Right.
I don't know, we're probably test planet 2477, and they're trying to figure out if we're the ones who solve some problem or some
right. So I don't tend to put this on the guests, because a lot of them, especially in the case of Rob Shelsky and William Pullen, they
don't want to speculate.
They don't want to speculate. But if these aliens are nefarious, they're here for nefarious. Why? What purpose do you think they have?
Well, it can't be resources, because anything you can get on Earth, you can get in space. So, if they're doing that, I like the whole tagging of people and, only zapping the fighters that get too close or whatever. That seems to imply that, they're a bunch of marine biologist grad students here, doing a project on this random planet.
Right, you think?
On some level, this kind of gives me hope, because it makes me think, oh, we have more in common with the aliens than I thought.
Right.
Because,
they pay way too much for grad school, too.
Right, well, just the aliens being all transcendent and wise and trying to help us ascend and all that, I can't relate to that. But the aliens, they're just here to tag some things, and, they're probably going to end up doctoring half of the research when they're actually done, so that, the margin of error is acceptable and they get published. I can accept that.
You can accept that aliens are coming here in order to do some research, in order to go back and get a degree that they're probably not going to be able to use.
Yeah, or something.
Right.
Maybe they got a grant and they don't want to leave academia, so they're just puttering around, or maybe it's all, they're part of some corporate alien division for some massive alien conglomerate or guild or something, and they're just
well, that's actually kind of how I look at
human tech now using real humans,
being the
clone grown
movie fan that I am. I look at all the potential movie things, and one of which is Battlefield Earth, which anybody who's seen just rolled their eyes at that I mentioned it, but Battlefield Earth is based on L. Ron Hubbard,
right?
And it's the movie that John Travolta was trying to get made for years, and it basically is like a alien corporation, but the corporation is the alien culture. There's no distinction between the two, and they're here harvesting gold and using humans as slaves in order to do whatever it is they do for Dianetics. I don't know. It's whatever they're doing. I don't know.
Yeah, You never want to ascribe human motives to aliens, but at the same time, like,
How do you not?
once you look at all the facts, the thing that makes the most sense is that they basically just have the ethics of a call center.
Right.
Like,
Right, totally.
they're just here to do a job and they don't really care.
Right.
You know, we are expendable.
Right. And I don't know if it's so bad to prescribe human emotion and
Right.
thought patterns to aliens, because
Well, we're the only intelligent beings we know of, so...
we're the only beings that we know on this planet, and we know that our motivations are basically complex versions. This is what I think we know. I guess anybody
Right.
could argue with this. But I think human motivations are complex versions, just like, you know, Windows is a complex version of all the coding languages that are built underneath
Right.
it in order to get up to there.
You know, Deep Blue is basically just punch cards, but smaller. You know,
You know, and that's actually not a far cry. You know, it's like you went from tubes to transistors to, you know, the microchip and so on and so forth. But it's all still basically the same, built on top of it. And humans are really no different. We look at a rat, we look at a mouse, and we know that a mouse is really interested in you know, eating food and staying alive and mating with other mice, you know, and that tends to be the motivations that we all have. We might have complex versions about it, you know, but ultimately it's really kind of these things.
I mean, that is, evolutionarily speaking, those are the motives that, like, that's why our body is built the way it is. That's why our brains are like what they are, which is partly why I'm excited about, you know, cyborgs and transhumanism, because maybe we can
Right, but what I'm saying is if you're a firm
change that,
believer in evolution and survival of the fittest, and that is the way that life evolves, we can assume
Then it ought to
that
apply to
evolution
aliens as
and
well.
life and survival of the fittest is going to apply on whatever planet that they were on in order for them to get there.
Yeah.
Because in order to become better or better at something, you have to be confronted with a problem.
Now, the thing is, though, you can imagine, you know, versions of aliens that maybe have, you know, maybe they have a hive structure. Maybe they all, like, communicate telepathically. Maybe they have something like that, where you can imagine a creature like that. It's still all about survival of the fittest, but it's not, like, individual focused.
Totally.
And that, to
beehive
me,
wants to eat, survive, and mate with other bees. That's what a beehive wants to do. You know, it's like, it's still there. You know?
Right, no, that's true, but I'm saying on an individual level, we're looking at something very, very different than people.
You know,
and you might expect a group like that to be more benevolent, or then again, maybe not, because I find that, you know, human beings on the whole are very benevolent to the other human beings that we view as human beings.
yeah, and Rob had a good point about the 5% criminal aspect, and for the most part, we, you know, for anybody who's not amazed in humanity, just look at the roads. Statistically, there should be a lot more car accidents than there are. You know, but the self-preservation that we all have is what keeps roads from not killing
Everyone.
a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, it's really quite amazing that we're able to function like that with total strangers between steel and glass and still make it happen. You know?
Yeah. I mean, another possibility here is we don't know there's actually aliens in these vessels. Maybe all the other alien civilizations long since dead, or they're just on their own planets, like in a virtual reality.
Or
like
not
they're in a
interested.
matrix
Right,
or something. And these UFOs are just like totally obsolete, malfunctioning data collection drones or something.
Yeah, or
And they-
totally functioning data collection drones,
Yeah.
you know, that don't really care about what's out there.
Right. Either way, because I feel like sometimes, you know, their behavior is just so erratic. It's like, this seems like maybe this is a machine that just isn't really working right.
It's like an intergalactic Roomba that hit a corner.
Exactly.
And so now it's going to bounce off
That's
and go the other
exactly
way.
what I think UFOs are. that you perfectly summed up what I think UFOs are. Is they're just here and they're kind of dumb and they're just like grabbing people and they run the experiment and they're like inconclusive because our memory is broken. We'll put you back.
So are you thinking that the gray alien is really just an extension of that? Okay, it's been put here. Now we need something that's able to poke and prod and same thing,
smaller drone, maybe designed to look like a little person. So it's like.
Well, yeah, you gotta get your little fingers up in there.
Yeah, we have designed this to have big eyes and a big head, so you will identify with it.
They're all,
I think it's cute.
Yeah, so when humans interact, they're just all, yes, and we saw your gray aliens. They're all gray aliens. Yeah, the things, they're just all, you mean the Probutron 5000? We built that thing to be able to probe better than anything else in the world. Look, we gave it 5 probers on each hand, It's like able to probe.
Oh.
It can probe like 10 people at once,
You said the word probe far too many times just there.
It's the Probutron 5000.
No, stop saying it.
Yeah. Do you want me to probe you?
I'm good.
All right. You're listening to Radio Wasteland. Come on back. We're going to talk about what we got going on next week. All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland. All right, next week we got something kind of fun. Earlier in the show, while we had the random call-in, it is considered random because we don't actually give out the phone number. The caller was Carl Bott. Carl is
that guy.
Is the owner of the radio station that we're on here in Redding, California, KCNR, and he's going to be a guest on because he used to have a show called Outside the Wire, and where he dealt with a lot of paranormal, and a lot of it was more localized than the stuff that we deal with, which I'm really interested in.
We keep trying to get like guests who can talk about all the spooky stuff in Redding,
Yeah.
and it's very difficult to do that. So I'm hoping that he has some stories about.
Do you think they're scared of us? Are we condescending? I don't feel that I'm condescending.
I don't know. Maybe it's because we're hipsters, or I don't know what it is.
I'm a cripster. You're just a hipster.
Okay, that's fair.
You're a hipstress. Or a hip X. How are they doing it with a Latinx?
No, well, the X is just to denote like gender neutral because it's.
Yeah, but I've heard people say it out loud.
I know, but like referring to a group, it doesn't make sense if you say the X referring to a person.
Yeah, but what about the fact that my oven is feminine and my microwave is masculine? Don't you somehow figure out El Horno needs to be El Horno, which is the oven, so I guess that's masculine. All right, we're getting off topic here. I don't know how any of this works. I'm curious, because we have, this change in society, and then we have these languages that are very gender-based. So I'm interested to see where Carl is going to be bringing in a lot of his local experiences and stuff like that, and where he found them. And when I've talked to him, there's definitely been a fair amount of Lemurian stuff going on.
Okay, that's true. I did know about that. And we talked to... Who did we talk to?
We have had two...
Guy from Mount Shasta.
Right, 2 Lemurian guests who discussed them. One was
They
Ashlyn.
were not personally Lemurians, but they were discussing.
One was Ashlyn, kind of touched him a little bit. And then Garth Skywalker.
Yes, Garth Skywalker.
And he was a little more talking about it and the city within the mountain and stuff like that, So, I would definitely like to get more of that on. Because, and Bigfoot. We're in the hotbed
This
of
is Bigfoot country.
This
That's
is Bigfoot
true.
country. Yeah, perfectly put. So, I don't know. So, maybe Carl can connect us.
Yeah.
To some of the good local freakery.
You know what? I heard that big feet were overhunted here back in the 90s, and so they're endangered here, and they have to run a Bigfoot sanctuary farther north.
And what were they hunted for? Their horn? It's like Bigfoot horn?
Pelts.
Pelts?
Yeah.
Bigfoot pelts? Because, I'm sure that smelled great.
Authentic Bigfoot sweaters.
Right.
Bigfoot burgers.
They were making Muppets.
And the feet. Where do you think clown shoes come from?
All right, man. This is why they're not coming on the show. It's this sort of like, this condescending hipster attitude that you have. It's all your fault. All right, you're listening to Radio Wasteland. Check us out next week with Carl Bott. And up until then, well, check us out online at radiowasteland.us.
Do whatever you do when you're not listening to us.
Right. Eat. Have a snack and get some rest.